Hey, how's it going? So today I'm coming to you with day 38 inside of a 60-day video challenge. If you happen to be catching this video live, do me a favor and hit pound live. Let me know where you are tuning in from. And if you happen to be catching this video via the replay, do me a favor and hit pound replay and let me know where you are tuning in from. So today, the thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about two things that you should know. And when you know these two things, it's going to allow you to grow. So what are these two things? Thing number one is you need to know your marketing style. Once you know and understand your marketing style, you know how to precisely market. And when you know how to market, it's going to allow you to be able to have leverage. In addition to knowing your marketing style, you also need to know your numbers. How much does it cost you to acquire a new client? Again, when you know that, you can know what channels to use from a marketing standpoint, and you can know your leverage points. You can know how many additional people you can add to your team. There's just so many different things that you can know that you can do when you know your marketing style and you know your marketing numbers. Sometimes some of the things that I do is I just sit back and I kind of just reflect. I reflect on my experiences. I reflect on my expertise, and I just reflect on some of the things that I've been through. And sometimes the thing that I reflect on is I reflect on businesses that I've worked for, and I think about, okay, what were their marketing style and what were their marketing numbers? I may not necessarily know their marketing numbers, but I know their marketing style. And knowing their marketing style is very powerful, because the question that I sometimes ask myself is, what allows a company to hire hundreds of people, be in business for a very long time, and allow those businesses to be very, very, very profitable? I believe two of those key things are marketing styles and knowing their numbers. About 20 years ago, when I first moved here in the West Palm Beach area, I grew up in a small town called Belle Glade. I started working for a company, and the thing that that company did is that that company went out and generated a lead. I don't know and or remember how they generated a lead, but I know precisely what happened after they generated a lead. After they generated the lead, they gave the lead to someone like myself, who was an outbound, at the time, I called it a telemarketing position. An outbound telemarketing position, I would essentially take that lead, and based on the number and the information that's on that lead, I would dial out to the individual to try to sell them a credit card, right? So that was the goal. Let's just say, the company went out and acquired some leads based on people who were attending the university. We would call and we would say, hey, based on your affiliation with this university, you are eligible for this type of a credit card. It's going to have the university name, the university logo, so on and so forth. So that was the goal, and that was my job at the time. I didn't do well at that job, and I didn't do well from an outbound standpoint. So eventually I was released. Although I didn't do well, there were a lot of people that were around me that did very well from an outbound standpoint, from a sales standpoint, right? And not too long ago, I looked up this company, just out of curiosity to see if this company is still around. And 20 plus years later, this company is still around. So the thing that they were doing, 20 years ago is still working today. Right. So when I think about, their style of marketing, which is, hey, we go out and we generate a lead and we reach out to these people from the outbound standpoint and offer them a credit card, that worked. Now, I don't know if that's still their model today. Their model may have evolved, right? Because this is 20 years later. Their model may have evolved, but back then that was their model. And when I first started working with them, they had been around for at least 10 years. So, this company has been around for at least 30 years, and they figured out a marketing model that works for them, right? So based on the number of people that they have that is working there, and based on the overhead and that type of stuff, they figured it out. Not only did they figure out the marketing model, they also figured out their numbers. They figured out, okay, how much money will it require me to acquire a new client, right? So there's a couple of things that they have to take into account. If they're doing advertising to generate the lead, they have to take that into account. It may cost them, $100 to generate a lead. In addition to them paying money to generate a lead, the other thing that has to happen is that they have to pay someone, like myself at that time, right? I had a job that I needed to do based on that hourly salary to reach out to these individuals to try and connect with them for the sole purpose of getting them to sign up for this credit card. right? So all of those things, in addition to that, there was a building, right, that they had to pay. So all of those things, they had to take all of those things into account, because all of those things are factors in determining how much does it take me to acquire a new client. And even with all of those things that they had to do, pay me, pay the building, pay a manager, and pay all of these different people, they found a way to make it work. And I believe the reason why they found a way to make it work is because they knew what their numbers were. So let's just say from a cost standpoint, it cost them $400 to acquire a new client, but they know that at the 5 or the 6 month mark, they will be able to get a return on investment. It may not even be the 4 or 5 month mark. It may be the year mark. But in any case, they figured out a way to have a marketing process, make that marketing process work. In addition to having that marketing process work, they knew precisely what their numbers were. And once they figured that out, they can go ahead and optimize things on so many different levels. So the thing is that that's true for you and I as well, except that from a cost standpoint, our costs may be completely different. So the thing that I want to encourage you to do is I want you to identify one marketing process for your industry, right? Coach, consultant, or if you're in some other industry, figure out the marketing process that's going to work for your industry, because there is definitely a marketing process that works for your industry. Once you figure that out, the next question that you want to be able to answer is, how much does it cost me to bring in a new client, and what is my return on investment? So let's just say that you have a group coaching program, and that group coaching program costs $1,000, and that is the cost for someone to become a client, and it costs you about $300 to $400 to be able to bring in a new client. Well, if it costs you about $300 or $400 based on your marketing activities to bring in a new client, right at the gate, you are in a position where you are receiving a positive return on investment. That is a very good situation, to be honest with you, and that's a very good scenario, because when I think back and when I analyze or think back to some of the companies that I worked for, a lot of those companies didn't necessarily bring in a return on investment right away. They brought in a return on investment eventually, but I know in most cases it wasn't happening right away, because when you bring in a new client, this company is bringing in a new client, for example. As they're bringing in a new client, I know that the new client is not necessarily paying something right away. So when I was working for this credit card company, what was happening is that these people would sign up for the credit card, and as they sign up for the credit card, right, they have to accrue interest before the company could even make any money. And in some cases, if you pay off your credit card within 30 days, whatever the case may be, you may not even pay any interest. So I know that these type of companies, they were not getting a return on investment right away. However, they found a way to make it work, and the reason why they were able to make it work is because from a cost standpoint, they understand the cost to acquire a new client. Not only did they understand the cost to acquire a new client, they figured out, they may have not even necessarily had to figure it out, to be honest with you. They found, or they replicated, and or they embraced a marketing process that has proven to work in their industry. And in our industries, it may take us some time to figure it out. In our industries, there's definitely marketing processes that work in our industries, and there's also the whole methodology of you figuring out what your numbers are. So once you determine those two things, cost to acquire a new client, so your numbers, and once you determine a marketing process, then you are going to definitely grow. All right, so then this says strategic marketing for my industry. Yeah, so there's definitely a strategic marketing process and or a strategic marketing plan for your industry, Dennis. So I believe that it exists for a lot of different industries, right? Because if it didn't exist, then we wouldn't necessarily have industries, right? Even if you think about a fast food place like McDonald's and or a Burger King, there's a marketing strategy that works for those industries, and they figured it out. Not only did they figure it out, it's been working out for them for a very long time. So thanks for tuning in. Pound Live, if you happen to be catching this live, let me know where you're tuning in from. Pound Replay, if you happen to be catching this via the replay. That's all I have for you today, and I'll talk to you soon.